For those of you who don't know me, my name is Elizabeth Barton, and I'm the Associate Dean of Computer Engineering and Electrical Technology here at the college. I have had the pleasure of teaching some of the folks on the panel over the years, so I'm really enjoying having them back today as part of our virtual Meet the Grad Alumni and Industry panel. And so what I'm hoping is that they can share some of their insights on a variety of different topics today with us. So before we get into it, I'd really like to give a warm welcome to them and introduce them all to you. So maybe what I'll do is just go through individually, and then we'll kind of jump right into the panel questions, I think, and give you an opportunity to maybe tell us a little bit about yourself through the context of the questions as we go. So Nathan Field graduated from the Electrical Engineering Technology Control Program in 2017, and he now works as an automation and robotics manager at Ingenuity Incorporated in Nova Scotia. And he's also all over LinkedIn. So if you look him up, he's always posting his new projects there. We have Ellie Latern, who graduated from the Electrical Engineering Technology program in 2020, and she is a junior product specialist control systems at Everest Microsystems Limited, which is local here in Ontario. So welcome, Ellie. And I know Ellie was part of the Women in IEEE group on campus while she was here with us. So I'm sure she can give us some insights in and around her experiences as well. We've got Patrick Mcginnis, who graduated from Electrical Engineering Technology Power and more recently completed the Electrical Engineering Technology Control program. And he acts as a key technical lead for electrically related projects specialized on protection and control projects at the Energy and Power Utilities Lab. And finally, we have Shivam Sexna, who graduated in 2017 from the Computer Engineering Technology program. And he is joining us from BlackBerry QNX, where he's currently working as a system software developer. So a lot of credentials and great setup for our panel today. And as you can see, we've got a good mix of experiences from computer engineering to power to controls to automation. So hoping that we can jump right into things and get some of your insights, folks on the panel. So with that, maybe we'll start off with the first question. So we'll go through a series of questions, and then time permitting, we can take some questions from the audience as well. So the first question I had was, what has your career path been after graduating? And I was thinking maybe, Shiv, if you want to start us off, you could give us a little insight into your thoughts.
Yep. Thanks, Liz. So I was fortunate enough to get multiple offers while I was in my last co-op. So just before my last semester, I picked the one with the company that I was at the co-op with because I love the people. And one of the things that you notice once you start working is that when you work with someone for 40 hours, you should like them because otherwise it becomes pretty tough. So I loved them. I loved the work. So I took the job and it was mostly about related to networking and server administration at first, but they let you have these mini co-ops within the company, so you get to experience a lot of other departments as well. That's how I slowly branched into cloud automation and infrastructure automation, pure network administration, and finally looked into low-level programming like I did in school because that was the only thing that was missing. So then I looked into the department where we write operating systems for cars and all the other cool low-level stuff, and that's where I'm at right now.
Great, thanks so much. And maybe I think, Patrick, you had some things to add there as well?
Yeah, so I graduated from the technician program in 2011. I worked a few different places. I ended up coming back to complete the technologist program. I graduated 2017. And then from there, I ended up at a company straight out of college called Virelec. And I was working there as a systems integrator. So what Virelec does or did was they were a contractor to the utilities. So a lot of my projects were with Hydro One, Toronto Hydro, and we would do system integration of substations. So a new substation is being built or something's being modified. A consultant will create a design for the utility, but then they'll hire somebody else to actually carry out the integration. And then that's what we did. So I worked there from 2017 to 2019. And then in 2019, Virelec actually, I want to say went under, but they closed. Kind of an unfortunate event, but because I had those skills and I kind of specialized in something, Mohawk was looking for somebody to take care of the Caroline substation and the projects related to that. So I ended up being a pretty good fit for that. And that's how I got in here at Mohawk. And now I'm working here in the Energy and Power Innovation Center. What we do here is applied research. So we work with industry partners to advance technology or attempt to advance technology in industry, give students a taste of industry and also make that connection between students and industry partners and hopefully help people get jobs.
Right.
And that's where I'm at now.
So we've heard a little bit from a power perspective and we've heard a little bit from a computer engineering perspective. Nathan, could you give us a little bit of perspective from the automation and robotics side of things?
Sure, absolutely. So my path was not quite a straight line, kind of like Patrick's actually. I went to school a little later. I was 23 when I started in 2013. Prior to that, I did a lot of crappy jobs that made it so you want to go back to school. So I went back and yeah, as I said, 2013, graduated in 2017. Scattered in and amongst there were a couple co-op terms. One was at a company called Loric Tool and Automation, and that was in Brantford, Ontario. And that was doing robotics, automation, design. And that was ideal, getting hands-on experience with that. Utilizing the skills I'm learning in school at the time. And then I did a term at General Motors in St. Catharines as a maintenance supervisor. So an interesting co-op job, being that you're supervising, upwards of say 15, 20 tradesmen, not technical, but really hands-on and needing to learn people skills and dealing with shift work and fun environments. So that was a nice offset of the technical skills. So that was during school. When I graduated in 2017, I actually utilized the technical skills and not the supervisory skills to work at a company called Handling Specialty. That was in Grimsby, Ontario. And great company. I did a lot of controls work, a lot of PLC, HMI, VFD programming. I got into the design of, high power battery circuits, building custom AGVs, autonomous guided vehicles. That was awesome. I would still be there if not for my wife and I really wanting to move to Nova Scotia. So in line with that, I was there for 2 years. We came here where I'm at now, didn't have jobs, said we would figure it out when we got here. We just really wanted to buy a house and couldn't really afford one there. So I came here in September of last year, 2 years ago, I guess now. And within a couple months, I found a job working at Ingenuity. Automation and robotics doesn't quite exist out here in Nova Scotia yet. So I'm actually starting the department. I've hired the guys, managing the team, getting everybody up to speed in robotics, automation, and now a lot of data and the custom machine vision as well, and AI and machine learning.
Fantastic. So I guess along those same lines, you've talked a little bit about all of the different elements that kind of come into a successful career, and by no means is it just the technical side, right? So one of the things that we wanted to touch upon, we keep hearing repeatedly when we speak with our industry partners, is how important the soft skills are in your profession. And so I'm just curious, above and beyond your technical training, how have they helped you succeed? And I'm kind of speaking to the panel. I'm thinking maybe, Ellie, would you mind starting us off with that question?
Sure. So for me, I'm finding that Organization and time management skills are really coming in handy, especially since I'm working primarily remotely due to the pandemic. I haven't actually met a lot of the people on my team yet in person. Some of them don't actually work in Burlington, so I'll never meet them, but I haven't met some of them that I would normally have known by now. And we do a lot of things in my team independently. And then we rely on the notes that we leave for each other in Jira and other online shared databases to keep track of what we've done so that every time someone comes across a problem, they're not reinventing the wheel. And so it's really important to be able to be organized like that. And also for time management, my manager's very laid back. So if I wasn't careful about managing my time, it'd be very easy to get nothing done during the day.
It just shows you how much things have changed in such a short period of time, eh? That we're organizing work in a completely different way than we might have been even a year ago. And I know the industry's been shifting for a number of years towards more independent critical thinking and work, and we've kind of been orienting a lot of the program as well as capstones towards getting folks ready for that. But it's nice to hear that you're realizing that in your role. Patrick, do you have anything else that you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, and actually, critical thinking, as you mentioned, is probably, I think it's a pretty important soft skill. I guess we could say that's a soft skill. I mean, when sometimes you're going to be given a problem and it's not defined. Your day's not laid out for you. You just got a problem. You have to figure out how to fix it. A lot of people have, from what I've seen, have trouble with that, because we're so used to going to jobs where you're just told what to do. You're not really thinking about how, you're not using those skills. So that might be something that you find when you get out there. It's not there right away, but it is something that will come with time. Other than critical thinking, personally for me, I found just being able to ask the right questions, knowing what you want to know, and being able to get quickly get an answer out of someone who has that information. So when I was working at Virelec, most people, their first language is not English. So there is a little bit of a barrier there. So being able to be really concise with your questions it was pretty important. And lastly, I would just say your attitude is very important, not just a positive attitude, but the right attitude. Sometimes, like the objective of your day is to get the work done. And sometimes maybe your ego can get in the way of that. I think, maybe somebody is wrong about something and you have to let them know they're wrong. There's a few different ways you can do that. You can be, polite about it. You can avoid any unneeded conflict by, having those kinds of skills. So, yeah, I would say those three things: knowing what you want, being able to ask the right questions, critical thinking, and attitude.
Great, thanks so much. Anything that any other panelists would like to share before we go on to another question? I think it's a pretty comprehensive answer, but I think, the takeaway that I get from our panelists is just how important all of these different elements are in success, and that it's not just a function of having the technical chops, but it's also having the real desire to work as a team and work towards a goal, and and not letting you be the limiter and rising to the occasion in the role. So thank you for kind of giving some practical examples of that. So the next question we had on the list was, have you pursued any additional education and training through your career? And I think in speaking, Nathan, you mentioned a little bit about going back to school. So maybe if you could kind of start us off here and share a little bit about what your trajectory looked like for education after you finished at Mohawk.
Sure, absolutely. First of all, Mohawk was a great jumping off point. I've talked to many university graduates and I've hired university graduates, and they all kind of say the same thing, which is they kind of wish they got more hands-on experience and more practical, stuff that they could utilize initially right out of the gate. So no complaints there about getting a job and having the skills to do, automation, robotics, all of that. I had that for sure. I myself kind of took a different trajectory. I knew I wanted to become a professional engineer. So almost immediately I contacted the PEO and have challenged them to get the designation by doing exams. I've since written like 8 exams or so. So that was sort of one different path that I took. In light of that, I would recommend it to anybody who can self-study. Obviously, you need to learn it yourself. And anybody who has about 3 weeks of time every 6 months to dedicate to a couple exams, for sure. But totally worth it. I feel that once I get that designation, it sort of closes the loop. Getting your CET and your PEng is going to be a really nice milestone. I've also done some project management training through Waterloo University and some free courses. That's a caveat, actually. You don't need to pay for education nowadays for a lot of things if all you need is the skills. If you need a certification, then okay. But there's so many things on LinkedIn Learning and Udemy and things like that. And actually, in light of that, I've taken many AI and machine learning courses through those methods. And then I did a couple courses in AutoCAD Electrical and SolidWorks Electrical. I don't know what Mohawk is currently teaching. I think we touched on AutoCAD Electrical, but the days, at least in my industry, the days of doing schematics using regular old AutoCAD are almost gone. So getting into, a skill set of learning how to use a schematic package, not just a drawing package, is really, really important and helped me quite a bit.
Thanks so much. And Patrick, do you have anything else that you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I originally took the technician program. I, like Nathan, was not happy with the jobs I was getting and I was in, so I eventually came back for the technologist program. I really like what Nathan's doing, challenging EO and going that route. I don't know if I'd be capable of doing that on my own, but that's really if anybody is comfortable with doing that, for sure go that route. But I've just signed up for the BTech program at McMaster. So I'm going to go that route. I think for me, it's a little bit easier. I'm working at Mohawk right now. McMaster is right there. And it's something that I can do. It's part-time, and I can take 1 or 2 courses. I can kind of do it at my own pace. But yeah, I would encourage anybody, if you're interested, if you know what field you want to get into already, if you have an idea for that, for sure. Yeah, I would look into the BTech program because they have one for power and energy. They have one for computer science. I believe they have one for some kind of automotive. There's a few different streams there, so I totally recommend it.
Thanks. And Shiv, I think you just started a next step as well. Would you like to share that with the group?
Yeah, I actually also enrolled into the McMaster's BTech program for software engineering. Although I would recommend, if you are taking computer engineering and you are looking to get into some sort of higher level engineering and IT, you might want to look into certifications instead. Like Nathan mentioned, AI and machine learning is going to be pretty big, and it is growing pretty fast. So getting into cloud and getting all those certifications in order would be helpful if you want a profession, because certifications, like he said, also is something that you would only need for a credential and not really for the skills. But yeah, like Patrick also mentioned, the BTech program is really good. So far, I've only my second semester there, and it's been really, really helpful in brushing up some skills and getting you up to speed with the industry.
Great, thank you. And just to put in a quick shout out here, we do have some post-grad certs too, if you're looking to kind of extend your learning exposure. Specifically, around cybersecurity would be the one that I would probably mention to this group, but there are others in data analytics and project management and some other ancillary fields. You know, if you do feel like there are elements of the soft skills or skill development that you feel like you want to continue to tackle as you start to enter the workforce. What I'm hearing from all of you, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you kind of had an idea of where you were going to head out of school, and maybe you started off in that direction, but things may have shifted a bit. And so, you know, with that comes the opportunity to be a lifelong learner and to continue to elevate and to think about how you build out your learning beyond what you initially started with out of school. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, actually, I worked in engineering before I went back to school, and I thought I was just gonna go to Mohawk, get my diploma, go back to Port Elgin, work for Bruce Power for the rest of my career, have no problems. And I am now in a completely different industry with no regrets. So that just through what I learned at school kind of completely changed my outlook and what I want to do. I am planning on doing a degree in computer science, probably through Athabasca at some point. Just with everything going on with COVID, kind of putting that on pause until we see where that lands. But yeah, like Mohawk changed what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
Awesome. Thanks, Ellie. So maybe let's shift gears a little bit. We've been talking about kind of career trajectory to get to this point, but can we start to look forward now? And I think I'm going to ask each of you the same question here around what do you see as the coming trends in your sector? And is there something that you would like new students as they're coming out into the workforce to be aware of and know about as they enter into your industry? And maybe Patrick, we'll start with you.
Sure. Yeah. I would say in the protection and control or power system industry, what I'm hearing a lot about is data science. So I don't know how you would take that, you know, if you're coming out of this electrical engineering control program, but that is something these guys are really going to value going forward, because there's so much data being collected. What do we do with it? How do we store it? How do we access it? So actually at this last, I was at an Omicron symposium. Omicron's a pretty big manufacturer. And the theme throughout that entire symposium is that the combination of the data scientist skills along with the technical power system engineering skills, it would be a deadly combo. I think those were the words they used. So I would say, yeah, having that combination would be very useful.
Awesome. Thanks, Patrick. Ellie, how about you?
Okay, so Evertz is a company that makes hardware and software for the broadcasting industry. So everything from what plugs into the back of the camera right up until it gets into your computer, we make all of that stuff. So a lot of our stuff right now, especially in the past year, companies are looking at more federated systems. So they want to be able to use a studio in New York to control and have the control room in Los Angeles or Hong Kong or something like that. So being able to handle the internet security related to the issues of putting all of this data across the open internet instead of having it confined to one physical location is definitely a hot topic at work these days. So that's definitely something I definitely would recommend that people have, like when you graduate, if you're doing the electrical program or computer engineering, you're taking at least one networking class try and retain some of that knowledge. I cannot think of a job that you'll get where you won't use the internet. So knowing the basics of what an IP address is, and like kind of having just a basic understanding of how things work, at the very least, it'll make it more useful for you when you're talking with the IT guy when it's not working. So you'll definitely need those skills.
It just shows you how much we've come to value our IT guys too, right? And that's actually been a theme we've heard throughout our advisory committee meetings as well, the growing overlap between specifically automation, computer engineering, and networking, and certainly electrical engineering plays a role in that as well. Shiv, would you like to add anything to that? Any trend in your sector that you'd like new graduates to be aware of?
Yeah, actually, it's funny. I discussed this internally, and most of the folks that what I've known for a while when I started was that, especially in computers, but I'm sure in other fields too, but trends change very, very rapidly. So the saying this just goes like there are no trends in this industry because it's like something is big one day and the very next day something new has been developed and everybody's using that now. But if you develop your skills as a programmer or an engineer per se, like very fundamentals that you learn in school, uh, like Ellie mentioned too, like the very basics of say the IP and the other stuff. But I'm talking more like absolute fundamentals that you will be taught in school, like the data structures or fundamentals of how computer hardware architecture is built. You'll be able to adapt to these trends really rapidly. So while I could tell you to get into machine learning and AI and all the algorithm stuff and start looking towards full stack programming, because advertising the data is going to be just as important as collecting the data. So all of that comes down to basically your fundamentals and how strong you are as a programmer. So don't worry too much about the trends because trends will come and go, especially in this sector in computers. Focus more on your fundamentals and improve those at the job every day, and you'll have no problem.
Great, thanks so much. And then finally, Nathan, if you had to offer some ideas for trends within your own industry that you'd like the grads to be aware of.
Sure, absolutely. So we've kind of touched on each little aspect, but in automation, especially here in Nova Scotia, where plants are just now implementing it, and I'm trying to skip, the 5 or 10 years we are behind Ontario, and let's put a SCADA system in their databases. So let me revert back to that quick. There's a huge trend right now in the IT, OT operations and, IT convergence, they call it, in Industry 4.0, which I hate that term, but it's pretty, reminiscent of what's going on, which is you have low-level protocols, basic PLC protocols that we learn about in school, like Ethernet IP and Allen Bradley World. There's those, and then of course you have the internet, which we've talked about, and there's communication protocols between levels of low-level devices to like MES systems and ERP systems. So being able to know how networking works, and in particular, I would highlight looking into OPC UA and MQTT. Those are industry protocols. Well, MQTT isn't necessarily, but it's used a lot in industry. Definitely keep an eye on that. There's other variants. There's one called Sparkplug B, which is a variant of MQTT, which has really nice applications and remote access. So keep an eye on those. I would highly recommend being very versed in Python from a basic level as a programming language. It touches on everything we've talked about, data science. I use it for image processing. You can use it to write a quick script to impress your colleagues really quick if you need to like change a file to one type. And it's just a really handy language, and I don't see it going anywhere. Quickly to touch on robotics. I'm not sure if at Mohawk we're talking about ROS, Robot Operating System, but it's a great open source platform developed through MIT, of course. to get behind the scenes of industrial robots and do things that you couldn't do, 10 years ago. So we're using it a lot. So looking that up, just being acquainted with it so you understand what other capabilities industrial robots have. So that's going crazy. Digital twinning is another big trend right now. If you want to look it up, it has huge potential. I haven't seen it utilized in its best way, but if you want to check out Siemens MindSphere. It's pretty cool, the capabilities. And yeah, that's pretty much it, I would say.
Thank you so much. And just kind of add on to some of the things that Nathan mentioned there. We do have ARV, our postgrad cert that we do here at the college. And the idea of virtual twinning kind of pairs into that if you look it up. It's the idea that you're going to create a virtual tool that mimics what the in-person tool looks like. And that can go towards performing program maintenance, trying to do design changes ahead of time so that you don't do a physical build, and it can save a lot of money. So certainly, things to think about if you're looking to extend yourself. And there are some opportunities here at the college to explore that if it's something you don't feel like you're comfortable self-exploring. So maybe let's turn our attention and let's talk a little bit about working in the field for a minute. And Shiv, I know you had some thoughts around what resources new grads could use to find work in the field. So I was wondering if you could just speak for a moment about the places and people to turn to, as part of your job search.
Yep. For me, for the online search part was mostly LinkedIn, and the college portal was really good, especially for the employers that apply for or that sign up for the college portal for when you were applying for co-ops usually are also looking full time. So if you had a list of some of the things, some of the employers that were there, you might want to look at their career sections on their websites. As for in person, you should first place would be if you had a good co-op, would be the co-op employers, to ask them if they have any openings. So reach out to your managers and see if they are hiring anytime soon. If not, then I went to my professors. All of them were really, really helpful in help you figure out your resume and guide you towards towards some of the employers that they know, give you references. They were all great and amazing. So go to them. And then it would be to go to your friends and other folks you've met throughout the school. And keep in mind, and I think this would be one of the things I would have added to the second question you asked about the things that are important, the soft skills, to always keep networking. Nobody told me this when I started working and stuff, but you should always try to meet people and learn about what they do and how they do those things, because you never know when you need them, and by doing so they'll know that you're interested and you'll automatically be considered for a role or something if something comes up. And it goes a really long way to just say hello and hi to someone in a hallway, and every time you meet them to greet them, and knowing what they do and how they do those things. I remember I got a job in the electrical lab in school at Mohawk just because I would say hi to George every time I would try to go get something. And he was like, do you want to come in and help me sort out these components in the packets one day? And I was like, yeah. So there was just volunteering first. And then I started getting more and more close to how things work, right? And that's how you have to branch out and actually look for jobs and stuff, is just by networking. It's very, very important. And I can't emphasize that enough.
Thanks so much. Yeah, that's invaluable advice. And I know it's that particular piece of advice is how I've gotten all of my jobs over the years. So certainly always looking for who you can speak to, what you can take away from them, and looking outside of what you might feel comfortable with too, eh? So this kind of takes me, we've talked a lot about career, we've talked a lot about some of your specific industries. So now if we take a step back and look at it from a student lens, I was wondering, is there one piece of advice or knowledge that you wish you had had at the beginning of your career? And Ellie, would you mind leading us off on this question?
Yeah, so I know I just graduated last year, but I actually, because I've been working in engineering for so long, it's kind of new and old at the same time. So what I would recommend is while you're still in school, think about the courses that you're taking and what it is that you enjoy about them. So not like necessarily the topic of the course, but what it is you're doing in the labs, the kind of work that you're looking at, the kind of way that you approach the problems. Because your work day to day might not necessarily resemble one particular course, but the types of things you're doing in your work will probably resemble something that you've done in classes. So for me, I loved my applied research projects and I made a really big deal about it at the interview for Everts, and that's how I got the job that I got. And now I'm doing basically my applied research project at Everts all the time, which is excellent. I couldn't imagine anything better. So whether you like problem solving or drafting or writing technical reports, kind of figure out what it is that you enjoy the most and look for jobs that have that, even if it's not necessarily for an employer that you're originally thinking of.
Awesome. Thanks. Great advice. And Nathan, would you mind weighing in here too? Just advice and knowledge that you wish you'd had at the start of your career?
Sure, absolutely. So there's many different things I could highlight, but there was one that jumped to mind when you said it. So I wanted to highlight that quickly. And that's to accept the fact that even though you just graduated, you don't know it all. It feels like you do, or you might feel like, you're fresh out of school, you know all the theory, you can walk in and you're just you might feel unintentionally cocky. Maybe not everybody, but I've had many people I've worked with. I myself, I've hired people, I've had co-ops. They come in and they're not able to learn and retain new information because at the time that they come in, they think they know it all. And it's a common effect. If you want to look it up, it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect of perceived knowledge versus what you know. And I just found that I myself would have hit the ground running and learned a lot more quicker if I would have accepted that I know the least I will ever know in my career when I graduate. And that goes for many other people that I've worked with. And they all say the same thing too. They're like, oh, I just wish I would have been more humble and accepted the fact that now is the time I know the least, even though I feel like I know the most. So that's a recommendation of mine, to be humble and, always be learning, but accept the fact that, you're at the beginning of your career. Absorb everything that everybody may have to say, because even if you think you know it, you probably don't. Not as well as you will later.
Well, and that's just shows what we all have in terms of our potential to grow over time, right? Regardless of where you are, there's, especially in these industries, right? So much opportunity to learn more and so much opportunity to learn from one another as well. So with that, I'm going to call this to a close. I want to thank all of our panelists again, Patrick, Shiv, Ellie, Nathan. I really am very grateful for you taking the time, and I know the students appreciate it as well.